Okay, so let's get this video underway. What it basically is we're talking about what effect cocoa polyphenols can have on cognitive function and health span and health functions in general. But we're primarily going to focus on the cognitive functions, which is basically learning, memory, and lack of memory and brain function decline as you age. So interestingly enough, this study right here is a human study, which is good for us. And they basically gave these groups like 3 different levels of polyphenol cocoa powder drinks. So the polyphenols in cocoa is a lot like what you would find in green tea. So if you're not very familiar with green tea or cocoa, this is going to be a little bit of a tougher video for you to follow. But essentially, cocoa and green tea have a lot of the same polyphenols, one of them being epicatechin. Epicatechin is probably one of the star ingredients or the star catechins out there because incidentally, it was, I think, one of the ones that was shown to have like the biggest anabolic effect on muscles. And incidentally, as you find out through this video, it also has strong effects on the brain as well in 4 different organisms. So I'll give you a little bit of a highlight here. This is going to feature humans, rats, snails, and roundworms, all which had positive effects from cocoa polyphenols. So let's start off with this one. So basically what this one did is they showed that they gave these people 3 different levels of polyphenols, and each one, as you progressed at a higher concentration, had a greater effect. So it was somewhat linear and in a dose-dependent fashion. Now, this is not something, I'll say this early on, this is not something that you don't have access to. This is something that you readily have access to by getting cocoa powder from the grocery store. Not the sugared stuff, but just the pure cocoa powder. The sugared stuff might work, but the cocoa powder with the unsugared is probably the most efficient way to get these polyphenols. So from what I found out in the past, there's roughly like 30-ish, 35 milligrams of polyphenols per gram of cocoa powder. And there's roughly 5 grams of cocoa powder in a tablespoon. So that equates to roughly 150 milligrams of cocoa polyphenols in a tablespoon. If you compare that to what you see in here, that more than meets the low dose group at what, 48 milligrams, and that moves us further into the middle range. Now the middle range is roughly 550 milligrams, and the upper range is close to 1,000 milligrams, roughly a gram. It's probably safe to take. I don't think there's going to be any issues with that, but that's up to you how much you want to take. And so let's proceed and see what happened in this study. Okay, so let's take a look at the data table here, and they had 2 primary tests that they employed in this study, and that was the trail making test and the verbal fluency test. Now both of these are used to test for cognitive deficits in people of advanced age, or really of any age for that matter, because Alzheimer's can happen even at quite younger ages, unfortunately. A former coach that was at my high school unfortunately died in his early 50s due to early onset Alzheimer's. I won't go into all that. Very sad circumstance. But anyways, the trail making test is really, really simple. Trail making test is connect the dots. And what they do is they show the person the exact trail they want them to make, and they have to recreate it as accurately and quickly as possible. The verbal fluency test is basically they give you a category, and you have to come up with as many words as possible in a given amount of time. The more words you come up with in a given amount of time, essentially the faster your mind is functioning. So both of these tests are kind of like speed and accuracy tests. And you can see in all these, they have all gotten better in a dose-dependent manner, ranging anywhere from 5% improvements at the lower dose roughly, all the way up to like 30% improvements in the highest dose. So who even knows what would happen if they gave them an even higher dose? Nobody truly knows. But quite amazing, honestly. Okay, so we demonstrated that this does seem to work in humans. But the question is it a fluke, right? Does it work in life in general? And the interesting part about this is this particular study is a snail. And it's like, it works in snails? Yeah, it works in snails. It's crazy. But anyways, so how the hell did they figure out it works in snails? Let's take a look. Okay, so what this study did was is they identified prior to this that epicatechin actually had positive neurological effects on this particular type of snail. But what they wanted to see was what would happen if they gave them epicatechin containing food products and allowed that to be ingested and absorbed into their system. What they found out was that green tea, cocoa powder, and epicatechin within the apple skins was actually almost as effective as pure epicatechin. So let's take a look at some of these results and take a look at this. Oops. Okay, so here we have figure 1. Now, if you look at figure 1, you'll see like part A. Part A is when they gave them no polyphenols. Now you can see what they did is they tried to train these things to not open their mouth. What they did is they put them in like an environment that kind of prevents their body from absorbing oxygen so that they would have to open their mouth to intake oxygen. Okay? And what they did is every time they opened their mouth, they kind of poked them so that it would discourage them from opening their mouth and to kind of condition them not to do what was essentially necessary for them to get oxygen. And what they found out is in part A, they had a little bit of training. So they went from putting out like 9 openings to only taking about 8. So a little bit of training, a little bit of conditioning. Now, when they actually gave them the epicatechin, they went from trying to open 11 times to about 6. So it's almost like the memory formation and the training was almost twice as effective in this snail when you had epicatechin being absorbed into their system. Not going to elaborate much on this. This is the same effect. So this is the green tea, the cocoa and the apple skins, and you can see it's very similar effect to the epicatechin. So yeah, moving on. This part would be very interesting to most people into molecular biology and possibly even some doctors because it highlights the time dependency and the timing of the dose of the epicatechin. See, a lot of people believe this is due to a general antioxidative protective effect. And this suggests that it's not exactly that's influencing the long-term memory, but actually an effect the epicatechin is having directly on the neuron. And it can't be delivered too much prior to the learning task and too far after the learning task to get an ideal result. Okay, so here's the study that highlights the timing of the epicatechin in long-term memory formation. Okay, so here we have a table that demonstrates what happens when the epicatechin is delivered 1 hour before a learning task, immediately after a learning task, and 1 hour after the learning task. So B is what happens when it is delivered immediately after the learning task, and that is far superior results. There's essentially no results in A and C. So I guess ultimately what we should probably do if we're trying to leverage this for learning tasks or languages or enhancing sports performance, probably take it while playing the sport, or I guess immediately after. I wouldn't wait too far after, but I did read somewhere that polyphenols were believed to have effects on working memory, I think up to about 2 hours after ingestion or within 2 hours of ingestion. So it's kind of known even in humans to respond pretty quickly or to induce effects pretty quickly. So I don't know. More research is needed. Okay, moving away from snails, we have C. elegans. Now, C. elegans is something that's used extensively in genetic and aging and just about every kind of molecular research starts with C. elegans because it's a little roundworm that only lives roughly 20 to 30 days, and so you get results really quick. It's not something you got to wait around like 10 years to get any results for. So you can figure out what genes are doing what and what kind of metabolic pathways are being influenced here. So what they did is they did an all-around study here, but I'm only going to highlight the cognitive aspects of it. But they did an all-around study with cocoa polyphenols on C. elegans, and they found that it basically did everything good. Improved mitochondrial function, made it live longer, improved its learning ability. Everything was better in this. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so here we have some of the cognitive data tables, if you want to call a roundworm something that has cognition. But anyways, in part B, you can see that its learning index was enhanced, that's pointed to. You can see the polyphenols protected the degradation of its learning index as it ages. Over into the part C, you can see that the dementia index was reduced. So how they basically measured dementia in a roundworm was pretty much protected to some degree with cocoa polyphenols. So interestingly enough, we're seeing here that this is a lot of different things. I mean, from humans to snails to roundworms, it's amazingly robust. Okay, so we're going to finish up this video with rats. And basically, this is a long-term study on rats. It's not necessarily an acute study on the polyphenols like it was with the snail. They looked to see what would happen with their health span, their lifespan, and even their cognitive function, which it improved all of it significantly. So let's take a look at some of the cognitive stuff to stay on topic. Okay, and here we have a table that shows how rats had an age-related decline in their ability to run a maze. Now, at one point, they were all really good at running the maze. However, though, the rats that didn't get the polyphenols had a logarithmic decline in their performance to run the maze quickly. And that really makes you wonder, you know, like, what kind of prevention can we have in humans that keep people playing the sports they love well into their old age? And maybe even learning them quicker when they are younger. I mean, imagine having a better prime and an extended enjoyable period. I mean, especially with things like you know, golf, tennis, bowling, pool, table tennis, things that don't require the greatest of strength capacities. And who knows, maybe even chess. Maybe it can even keep your chess capacity and your ability to strategize longer into your old age, you know. I don't know, that would really be interesting to see to see them tested on chess players and see how much new strategies they can learn and incorporate quickly into their game. I don't know. There's a lot of things to explore with this, but I'll say this: I've been trying this out. I've been taking about a tablespoon of cocoa powder a day, and I feel a difference. I can't. I'm honestly surprised, but I do feel a difference. I feel like I'm learning languages just 5 to 10% sharper. I feel better in a day. I feel like I definitely tolerate stress better. I know there was a lot of doctors promoting this years ago. A lot of TV doctors, YouTube doctors saying eat dark cocoa. You know, it's good for your heart. It makes you feel better. You know, anything that can reduce stress, make you feel better. And they had a very vague idea of what it might do, and more research has come out since then. But I think there's something to it. I really do. And I really don't put things out there unless I truly believe it. You can test it for yourself. It's cheap. You can buy a thing of cocoa powder for $1.50 or $2 or whatever it's going for in your area. I get mine for like $2 with a coupon, $2.20, something like that. It's no big deal. I just take a tablespoon of that or two, put it in a cup of water, stir it up, make sure and just chug it all down. And yeah, I think I'm doing better. I definitely feel better. One interesting thing I've noted, and this could just be purely psychological, but it might not be, my ability to get over stress and anxiety. I'm going through a lot of shit right now concerning business contracts and shit like that. I got a guy who's in breach of contract. I still have to get my money back from him. So there's a lot of stress in dealing with that and a variety of other things. And I get like these pockets of anxiety where I anticipate, like, what if this guy screws up? What if this guy doesn't want to give me my money back? Bunches of shit like that I'm going through, and amongst other things as well. And it all kind of comes to a boil sometimes. And I feel like I get this anxiety, and it just goes away within like 5 seconds. I can tune it out, and that's something I have not been able to do before actually doing this. Now, it could be placebo effect, but I don't know. I feel like I'm just a little bit better in general, like a 10 to 15% better. And I've been playing around with golf again, and so much is coming back so quick. Like, I can, in terms of my short game, I can clip the ball cleanly. I can make good contact from hitting with a baseball, like a baseball grip, an interlocking grip, an overlapping grip. I always struggled hitting with overlapping. I used to hit with mostly interlocking. And all of a sudden I find it just doesn't matter. I'm making clean contact no matter what. I can hit flop shots, regular chip shots, you know, full short shots, all that kind of stuff. And I'm kind of working back into it little by little. but everything feels good. That could be just because I played the sport many years ago and on and off and on and off, and all the muscle memories there just to be awakened. But I don't know. There's a lot of things coming together really good since playing around with cocoa, and been also playing around with cinnamon. I still stick to green tea. So pretty much my supplement routine is kind of looking like green tea, cinnamon, cocoa, and then ginger and turmeric. That's pretty much what I'm doing right now. I know that's a lot, and somebody said, well, how do you know this is doing that with everything else? And that's because I've been doing everything else for the most part, and this is the new addition. But, give it a try, see what you feel. You just got to test things out. Anyways, that's all. Long video. Hope the information is worth it. There's so much more out there, but I don't want to make a 35-minute video. Anyways, have a good weekend, and see you next time.